Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last design talk of today, which is Craftsmanship 2.0 in collectible design. I'm just going to introduce our panel today, and then we'll get started right away. Emma Crichton-Miller, who is a journalist based in London, one of the most prolific, certainly in collectible design and art and decorative art. We have Pierre Yovanovitch, who's certainly one of the most well-recognized interior designers working in Europe today, based in Paris. Julien Lombrail, one of the founders of Carpenters Workshop Gallery, who's exhibiting at the fair. And the duo behind Studio Drift, which is Lonneke, Gordijn, and Ralph Nauta, and they're here. Over to you, Emma, to kick things off.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming this afternoon. I hope that we'll have an interesting discussion. As we're all aware, craft has always been with us. It's been one of the first signs of our humanity, making things. And this fair this year offers us so many examples. They're the carved pillars from ancient Greece, the 19th century quilts from America that Calvin Klein has put in that extraordinary barn, John Prouvé's aluminium shutters. There is the latest crystal technology, craft in ceramic and glass. However, as I think we also are all aware, over the last century, craft has also been a divisive and highly contested term. And for some people, indeed, it seemed set against the whole project of modernity. Craft seemed to set itself for the past and against the future, and hand skills were set against advances of technology. Of course, this was not universal. But to some extent, a bitter war was established between craft and design. In the 21st century, however, the winds of change have blown again. Onto the scene have emerged extraordinary designers, craftsmen, and gallerists willing to end the fight between innovation and hand skills, seeking once again to put humanity, the human touch, the human scale at the center of technological change, and to encourage the creation of beautiful, one-of-a-kind or limited edition pieces or interiors which reflect a combination of technological advance and craftsmanship. So as our title today, Craftsmanship 2.0, what does it mean? Where has it come from? And where is it heading? That is the subject of our discussion. And here to elucidate some of this is a very powerful and interesting panel. So if I start with Studio Drift, probably very well known to all of you, Lonneke and Ralph have been working together since 2006 with their studio, educated together at that pioneering and innovative Eindhoven Design College? Design Academy, Eindhoven. And they have always tried to combine poetry with technology and to put together an interest in craftsmanship with offering themselves no limit to their imaginations. This year, they have been working with Carpenters Workshop Gallery since, I think, 2008. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you said you found them in Miami. And today, they have a retrospective at the Stedelijk Museum in Holland, which runs until the 26th of August. So those of you who are able to make it to Holland will be able to see that. So they are here. And then here we have Pierre Yovanovitch, who is one of the most renowned interior designers working today in Paris and in New York. And you too have been championing craftsmanship for many years, working together with skilled artisans to produce your beautiful objects and also interiors. And today at R&Co, there are those very beautiful chairs and tables. and the tables that expand, which have ceramic, and then the lights with their glass and ceramic. And this combination of a very contemporary and cutting-edge design sensibility together with this feeling for the hand and for the individually crafted piece. And then, of course, needs no introduction, Julien Lombrail for the combination of Carpenters Workshop Gallery, founded in 2006, at the forefront of this revolution in design, really, in limited edition design, in the support of very adventurous makers. And whilst there is a book, I think, that celebrates the 10 years that you have been working with these artists to hone a method of bringing together the most advanced, and some would say crazy thinking in many cases, with the most exquisite hand skills, whether that's working with bronze or wood or glass, or indeed the almost ethereal lights of Studio Drift. But since 2014, you've taken your engagement further. Carpenters Workshop Gallery, you may not know this, have established a whole series of workshops in Roissy, preserving artisanal skills and enabling artisans with skills that go back generations to work with designers with ambitious ideas to advance together, to create radical new pieces. I thought I would kick off. Oh, yes. So you see there the synergy between those beautiful objects in the white cube and then behind it, the craftsmanship. Well, I thought that I would put the question perhaps first to you, which was how you two understand craftsmanship in the context of your highly experimental and also materially heterogeneous work.
Yeah, I think craft always gets a feeling or a reference to the past, very much. And we do a lot of work with our hands, and we have to invent a lot of ways how to execute our work, because the techniques don't exist. So we see craft and technology and the way how to get everything together actually as one thing. This is the way how we work. And yeah, I think handwork goes along with developing technology, and it's like an ongoing dialogue between the engineers we collaborate with, and the programmers we collaborate with, and the people who do the handwork. And this is an ongoing, it's not like first this, then that, and then it works. It's like an ongoing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until you reach to the point that you can actually believe what you make. And that is for us the most important in the end, that you see the work and you can relate to it, and you can have an emotional connection with it.
Okay. And I think that's something that matters to you as well in the context of craft, that in your practice, craft has something to do with the emotional connection and the place of the human in.
Yes, craft and make the furniture very with a lot of humanness, I think, and there's a lot of randomness also with doing furniture, because each time is different. And I'm working with clients. I have an order for client. I'm not working with totally freedom. You know, I start to work with the craftsman because I was doing project, apartment, houses, and sometimes I didn't find the object I wanted in a gallery or in an auction. And finally, I decided to work with craftsmen to doing the perfect size, the perfect furniture for the project I do. That's why I start with, and I like the way because it's very unique. I'm sorry for I have a terrible flu, and yes, I start like that. Yes, to work with them, to trying to occupy the space in a very unique way.
Yes, and so that's then become an increasingly important part of what you do, to the point where you've begun to make individual objects.
Exactly.
That, yeah. Well, and then for you, Julien, at what point did, at what angle did you come at the question of craftsmanship? So for you, which have been the biggest influences in your understanding of the relationship between craft and design?
To me, craft is a tradition. It's a very old, ancient tradition. It's art was at the beginning crafts turned into sculptures, but also tools that were made by prehistoric human beings, and there was this tradition to honor the chief of the tribe, and then the queens and the kings, and now the wealthiest people on the planet. But there has always been this tradition to put whatever is the best into a project. So to us at the gallery, the idea was to choose the best artists, and when needed to build a team with the best handcraft people to try to achieve the best projects.
And was it at that point that you realized that in order for some of the more splendid ideas to be realized, you had to ensure that there were skilled people to realize them? In other words, that without those skills...
Yeah, we think that some artists or designers are not all the time should be making their pieces themselves, because they are maybe not the best people to cast bronze or to make parchments. So it's again, it's try to find, when needed, the best partners possible to realize perfectly some pieces.
Yes, and as far as you're concerned, the relationship in your work between the craft and the technology is sort of seamless. That it's developed over time, in the sense of as your ideas have developed, so your ability to push the techniques have developed.
Yes, we don't work from the starting point of technology or the technique. We work from a concept and a feeling that we want to bring to a space, and then we look for the right technology to execute our idea. And very often it doesn't exist yet, so we have to invent it. And sometimes we use part of existing techniques and add to that, and sometimes we find other people who can do it. Actually, we always try to find other people who can do it, but usually it doesn't work out in that way. And so in all our works, we work with many different people together. We outsource parts, we make several other parts, and that all comes together in our studio.
And I think then the craft partly becomes the managing of all those different relationships.
That's definitely a big part of it. It's not only being in your studio and making, it's also convincing people to work with you, convincing them to use their machines in an unorthodox way, which might break their machines, which they're not really happy with. And to work with artists sometimes. I mean, that is also not for everyone interesting in the first place, or they think it's not interesting. So I think this is a big part of what we do all day long, to find the right partnerships and to bridge everything. But we also, I mean, it's a blend of everything. And then we also have, of course, in our Fragile Future series, the natural aspect to it, which is a natural ingredient. And we also once a year go to the fields to pick the flowers, to do that. At that point, you're suddenly almost a farmer. You're harvesting and you're processing that in your studio. And I like that blend, and I'm very interested in bridging all those different
directions. From the most minute hand skill to vast logistical projects with engineers on scaffolding, trying to mount your projects.
Yeah.
And presumably this is something you find as well, that you're having to push the craftsmen you work with to get them to make things exactly the way you want, which may push against.
Yes, and I work mostly in a very old-style way, because I'm doing a useful object, sofa, table, and I'm not a technique man, and very simple furniture. But each time I have a meeting, I've met new craftsmen. They give me also a new idea, because it's a combination of idea. For example, when I work with a glassman who's based in Basel, who's doing my scone in the art company show, he gives me always new idea. But there's no technique. It's only a simple way. I work with massive wood. Then it's classic way to work. As you say, it's very traditional craftsman, and that we did since the 18th, 17th century, the way we manufactured the furniture. Then it's very easy. It's a dialogue between the craftsman and me, and in a very easy way. And that's the way we do the furniture. It's I have an idea, we draw something, and after he fabric very easily for us, And I try to combine material also. I work with ceramists, with carpenter, with glassmaker, with metal, and I try to mix every material together to make the furniture as singular as possible.
And also where each material sings, and so you see that the wood has been fully expressed in its materiality and in that way.
Yeah, it's a lot of sensibility, because the wood is moving. It's not dead. It's drying also with the furniture. Then the furniture is playing also by time. And it's something I like it very much. Nothing is too sharp, too slick. I try to give a lot of humanity in my design, because of the craftsman.
Yes, which it has, as you can see. And so for you, Julien, what role do you feel that you have been able to play at Carpenters Workshop Gallery in changing ideas about craftsmanship and design and the relationship between the two?
It's in the workshop. First of all, what we try to do is first to learn from the past all the techniques. So there is this educational thing, and then to try to improve the techniques that were proven efficient with mixing them with the new technologies. So this gives a result which is very interesting. What we also find out is in craft. There is very few research and development. What you've been able to do, Pierre, with your craftsmen is something great, but this is very rare that craftsmen can take time to try new things, because they have been always repeating something that they know to do very well from sometimes generations. And because they have to make a living out of this job, they can't really finance their own research and development, and this is something that we like to do on the edge of the orders we have, is to take time to try things, especially on patinas, for example, on bronze and aluminum. We spend time to try new combinations, and then we see the results. And these research are not asked by the artists we do represent. Is we just try things, and then we give the results to
so it becomes part of the sort of the vocabulary that's available to people, or the.
Our idea is to try to maximize the palette of possibilities for the artist.
Okay.
Because when you see bronze, for example, which is a very important material to me and for art since ever, it has been patinated always in very dark patinas. Aluminium is only painted, so it was very interesting to try to find new possibilities on this.
I think you, Lonneke, because you said earlier something interesting about the fact that you too have found it interesting to take on some of that sense of repetition from craftspeople, that you too have learned back, I suppose, that you have these ideas, you make them once, like an artist, but then you have to make them again, and that way you learn new things, I think.
Well, I think to make an object once is very different than to do a small production or a reproduction of something, because then you have to think in a complete different way. And almost all our works have elements of reproduction in it. So basically we first prototype everything, and that goes usually like 5 different rounds. That we always think we can do it at once, and now we are really clever, the next time we really do it at once, but it never works out that way. And especially almost all our works have motors, or or are moving currently. It's very important that it doesn't only look how you have it in mind, but it also acts like how you have it in mind. And so then after I think that's also where we find that process interesting, like the process of repetition and making and mastering in the certain techniques, but then we always make unique objects out of those repetitive elements.
Because I think, did Flylight then lead on to, for instance, the franchise freedom? Is it in the sense that through repeating or through trying to do it again, you pushed the craft a stage further, or the design? No.
Well, I mean,
it was a new idea.
It wasn't 100% a new idea, but it was more like looking at the piece, of the Flylight piece, and then seeing the swarming behavior and thinking, how can we get it outside of this physical object and into a free space, or just in the air? And then naturally we thought of drones, and that was already 10 years ago, I think. And then it took quite some time to actually achieve it, of course. So that's in that sense. In the meantime,
we mastered the Flylight piece, but we developed it. But it was always that dream to make it really fly.
Yeah. Okay. And from your perspective, how do you see your public, for whom you create interiors? Do you see a change in their attitude towards craft and craftsmanship? Do you think that people, maybe it's just a continuing respect for craftsmanship, or maybe there's a new appreciation of materials and the way that craftspeople work with them?
Maybe there is a new appreciation. In a way, they wanted a very unique piece for their own project. You know, they're very happy when I propose them to design, as I say, a sofa, really for the room, for the space, and this is the way my client, and I think the client in general, they like to have their own interior. You know, they're very
unique object,
unique, like a sculpture and something very special. But also, craftsman is very different from art, because art, you can work with totally in freedom. We work because we have an order. We have to make a sofa in a room. You know, it's very constrained. the art, there's no constraint. You painted and you don't know for who you're going to sell the painting. Me, mostly, I know where my furniture is going to be. It's the first time that I did a show in New York in September. It was my first time I designed the furniture, and I didn't know even the client was going to buy it. And was very new for me, and I imagine very differently the way I'm going to do the furniture. Imagine a table, something very easy. And working with clients, yes, it's what I say, it's very constraint, and that's why the difference, I think, between art and design, because you work for a command, for an order, you know.
But the client appreciates that aspect of craftsmanship, of the artisan, which is you can get a unique object.
Exactly. I think it's very important for them to have a unique and to be as singular as possible. That's the work of Carpenter. They propose singular piece. And when I try to be as singular as possible for my project also.
Yeah. And Julien, have you observed over the period that Carpenters Workshop Gallery has been supporting and championing this area of limited edition and one-off design, that there's been a renewed appreciation amongst the public for this very highly crafted, one-off, beautiful object where every aspect of the texture, the sensuality of the object, as well as its functionality, has been thought of? And
yes, we've seen in the art world 10 years ago, there was this debate that when you put craftsmanship into an art piece, it disvalues the piece because it's too much effect and all this. So. And we saw that a lot of artists were very dry, provocative, and quite conceptual. And this affected design also at this time. But more and more, we can see that collectors value craftsmanship because it's beautiful, because it's very sophisticated, and there is a human energy in it. It's the combination of an artist and handcraft people. They all give this little something which gives a great energy to the pieces, I think.
And I suppose that's the thing, it's ensuring the energy, because that's been the anxiety about artisanship, as you explained, which was that it can get stuck on repeating old skills and not pushing forward.
And it makes a bridge also with history. Yeah. And I can see that people make bridges between what some of our artists could do with Art Deco, or also with 18th century. And at this time, craft was very important, and it was sometimes not signed by artists but by craftsmen.
Okay, well, indeed.
I think if you look at especially in the past, you sometimes go to a museum and you see things that are made and you think like, wow, this is impossible to make nowadays because it costs so much time. And I think one aspect that has changed drastically is like how much time you can put in a work. And I think that is the most luxury, and I think that is what this whole Design Miami market is about, is really spending time in looking at it, developing it. And I think it's not so much about the techniques, it's about the approach and the attention and the time, and time is the most luxury thing we can all have in our lives. And in order to be able to spend so much time on an object, I think that comes to accelerate the quality of it, and I think that's the value.
I think that's true, and there is an element of the hand in that, but definitely one of the values of craft is that sense of time, which is the time that has been given to the object, but also the time that has been given to developing the skills that have enabled you to realize the object. Mm-hmm. And in your case, those skills cross all over from the hand to the most remote and virtual kinds of skills.
Yeah, we just don't make a difference between like old techniques or new techniques or
We just have to do them.
Yeah, we just have to make what's in our mind, and whatever works the best, that's what we do.
And I think that's something you pick up on too, Julien, is this notion that actually what you're valuing is skill. Yes, there is also the hand, and that is indeed a value, and hand craftsmanship. But there is also this value of skill, and skill that has been developed over a long period of time, and which is then given the space and the time to realize this superb object.
Yeah, and it's this addition of talents, which at the end makes one piece, which we think is very interesting. But that's what you have in music. For example, if you have an opera, you have a conductor, and you have someone who wrote the music, and you have the musicians, and all together makes it something extraordinary or not. And in this way, it's very sophisticated. And we love sophisticated and artistic projects.
Yes. And I think you too, because you're creating entire ensembles, you have whole teams of people working together, and you have to pull those skills.
I have craftsmen in my company, yes, they work every day we speak together, and every day we imagine new objects. Mostly because we have the order to do it, because I wanted to make not a total look, because I love to mix with furniture that I can buy to the gallery, and I don't like total look, but I try to make the architecture mostly total architecture with mixed of objects, yes.
And so, in a sense, it would be interesting to think about who your teams are, because one tends to think of craftsmen as being solitary people who work on their own, and yet you work with a team of about how many to make your projects?
Excuse me, what did you say?
A team. You're the team,
yes.
And your team of craftsmen and...
I have a carpenter. Who's worked with me, a ceramist who's with me, and outside a craftsman that I work not only for me,
but for a particular project.
Yes, exactly. When I think about some project, for example, the glass man, I call him, and but mostly I work with massive wood. This is my main, my base of furniture design, and this guy is in my company, and I see him every day, and every day we imagine new piece. And
and your team is.
Well, we have 20 people now, so and we're actually extending because we just don't have enough people to create the pieces that we think of, but and to do all the research. But yeah, I also thought that I was thinking about what you were saying, and like craft most of the time refers to the past, but we also do a lot of crafting that is focused on the future, whereby we have printed circuit boards, and we're making sketches of where all the elements of the circuit board goes, and we wanted to make it look as almost as natural as possible. And so in that sense, working with this new tech is also craftsmanship, and for myself personally, when I go to, like, also when I was a kid and I saw these new works in the contemporary art field, I got quite bored because there was not something for me to discover that shows this element of time or this element of perfection, where this one person freaked out to the maximum and made something unbelievable nobody else can make, and he does the best job to make this piece, to tell a story. That's what I'm always looking at in an art piece, and sometimes I'm missing that at the art fair, and I find it at the design fair.
And also, we in our team we don't have specific craftsmen. We train people for certain projects, and they kind of master within our studio. But we have clearly chosen to not have certain techniques in-house, certain specific techniques, because we want to be free to constantly work with new technologies. And if you hire someone who is very specialized and skilled in welding, maybe the next project you cannot use him anymore, because you don't have the freedom to change. And so we are based in Amsterdam, and we are in an area in a street where next door is like it's called the Amsterdam Machine Factory. They make and build machines, and in the other side is a powder coater. But we work with people from all over, mainly the Netherlands, but also sometimes from other countries, to find the skilled people we need for that project. So every time we have a new project and we kind of have an idea which direction we want to go, we cluster a team together of people from the best people from our studio to work on that project, and then external people. So our teams constantly change of combination and of skill.
It's also quite interesting to see from which countries you can find certain craftsmanships or how they work precision-wise. Personally, I love to work with Germans because, you know, they give you a deadline and it's finished, you know. If you work with Italians, you have a different energy. But
don't mention the French, huh?
no, the French are great, man.
And how about you, Julien? Because I think, as you said earlier, you started out as a team of 3, and now you...
It's, the workshop was set up 4 years ago, and with the four people, now it's 35 people in the workshop. And to give you an idea, the whole company with the galleries and this is 80 people. So almost half of the company are dedicated to production.
And presumably there's a sort of to and fro, a conversation back between designers and what's going on in the workshops. So.
And what is the idea at the beginning was to put under one roof different people, skilled people, with the artists, with us, with the engineers also, to discuss the project. Because what we used to do before is to have all those people in different parts of the city and part of the world. Yeah. So a project would take ages, and also you have a loss in translation because it's...
yes, and there's no continuity.
So to have everyone under in one place helps a lot, and we could see that the project that we are developing and producing now are more sophisticated than the project we did 10 years ago.
Maybe we'll just talk about a couple of other aspects of the traditional notion of craftsmanship and see where you think those play in today's design world. And I just wanted, you had spoken a bit about materials and the sort of quality of humanity and how those can be taken forward into a modern, into a future-looking context rather than a...
Yeah, it's very funny because I work completely different than you, because my root is wood, stone and ceramic mostly, and I work with a craftsman, and I stay in this universe, and as I say, I'm doing very simple furniture, I think in a very contemporary way, because they are as simple as possible, with a lot of humanity because of the craftsman. And yeah, that's my root. I want to follow the history of the design in a very traditional way, working with the craftsman, designing simple things. We do a lot of prototype, but in a very easy way, cheap prototype, thinking about a project also. I think it's very traditional in a modern way, finally, because the shape are different. I think we follow the history of the design in a more modern way.
And for you, material is sort of immaterial, really. In other words, you go for the material that will realize what you need to do, whether it's suspended concrete or glass or dandelion heads.
I think next to that, I think there's an aspect of, especially in our last work, there's an aspect of performance and kind of not the physical object is the value, but the immaterial connection and experience that you have with the installation, the object, is the bigger value in the piece than the actual material value. So for us, that is very, very important. But we have also, this picture, which is now on the screen, what I think already mentioned, we have that aspect of where we very, very, how you said it, afhankelijk van? Dependent on one material that we have to actually collect in the nature, and that are the dandelions, the pieces that we have been making with Julien for many years. And we have never expected that something that is seen as a weed could really become like the main part of our studio. And so every year when it's May, or sometimes it's already April, and sometimes it's June. It depends on the weather and on the winter. We are collecting those flowers in the fields, and we're searching for them, and we have developed a whole technique around that.
Well, I was thinking it's a new craft. I mean, it's one that hadn't been foreseen before.
Yeah, it also comes from the most oldest craft in the world, nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's nothing compared to that. You can't. We try to get close to it, but you know, it's the natural thing that's even more precise. So with the dandelion, you take it out of the field that everybody just discards as a weed, and then you put it in a museum setting, and people go like, "Oh my God, it's a real dandelion!" You know, it's so weird, this reaction, but it's just how people think, you know, or forget to look, or forget to see what's actually around them.
And I suppose that's part of your responsibility, Julien, is to follow your artists where they go. So it could be that they don't actually depend on any of the artisans in your workshops, that they're having to go and invent the crafts that they need.
Actually, we're representing 35 artists at the gallery, and they are like, very different techniques. The dandelions to recreating rain. I mean, it's completely...
well, exactly, the most high-tech. Yeah.
What's important to us is that it artistically makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That artistically it's something very genuine, something new in terms of creativity, meaning that it has not been done by something very similar by another artist in the past, that has the potential to fit into the design and art history.
Yes, and so that for you is those are the sort of criteria that you follow in terms of what you decide to support.
My mother was the publisher.
Yeah, and he's very critical, I must say.
Yeah. Well, I think that at this point we might see if there are any, if anybody else wishes to join the discussion. Does anybody have a particular question to ask any of our panel?
I don't think I need it. Oh, there we go. Okay, Drift, I have a question about dandelions. As long as I've known you and the work, I still don't know what the first eureka moment was when you decided to put the LED inside the dandelion. I just saw the one single one in Object Rotterdam, and then when Julien and Loic collaborated with you to do the first chandelier. But how did you decide to make this a light? Like, or did you already say that? Maybe I was late, sorry.
Good question. It was not. I think that is one of the most important things in a creative process. That if you first draw out exactly what you want and you then make it, for me that is not really creative. For me, you have to kind of have an idea. You start, and along the process, you discover things, and then you go in a direction that you could not have imagined before. And I think this is what needs to happen in a creative process, that you go beyond what you thought you could make. And so I think that was what happened with the dandelions. In this case, it was my graduation project, but it was in a very different version, and before Ralph stepped on board. And I was very interested in the structure of the dandelion because it tells a story about future, and it has a perspective because all those parachutes can travel and can have a new life, and that is all communicated by this dandelion. And I just took a dandelion from my garden and just had an LED laying on my desk, and I was kind of playing around without thinking, and I saw then that stem of that dandelion had exactly the same size as the LED. I thought like, oh, what happens if I glue the seeds on that light? And I just did it, and then I also had a battery, so I lit it up, and it's something magical started to happen. I just thought like, whoa, this is really interesting. I didn't know what it was, but I was just blown away by that idea that actually you can merge technology with nature. And until that moment, I always saw nature, or actually technology, as the enemy of nature.
Yeah.
And it was really those two things and had nothing to do with each other. And that started the whole idea of how can you blend those? And isn't this something that we should use in the future for our solutions? The things should start to get aligned and work together instead of push each other out.
I think also that to think of more recently, when you were talking about how you still to this day are trying to fight for that space of something very poetic in the technology, and that's sort of that in terms of craftsmanship, the finished object isn't finished simply when it's functional. It's only finished when it is truly poetic and will move the audience.
Yeah.
And I just thought you might...
Yeah.
Because that was with the dandelions and the LED. It had to work to thrill you as an object, rather than just working functionally as a...
Well, in the case of the dandelion, I mean, at that time, LEDs were still in a quite early stage, and they were like €4 per piece, and they had very bright and unattractive light. And by using those very fine seeds, the light start to spread in a very friendly way, and in a way that you could actually suddenly relate to this. So I think, and that is what we search for in all our work. We work a lot with movement, and it's really something different if you make a lamp move up and down, or you make it move up and down. That's like, it's like dance. I mean, there is an emotion in it. It's like animating. Making an animation, but then with objects. We animate the objects that we make in a way that it gets a personality. It becomes a personality, and you can understand it and build up a relationship with that work.
And I think craftsmanship 2.0 has to carry with it that sense of poetry and meaning, and not just sort of a wonderful skill. And I think that your furniture too has this wonderful wit and sensibility about it that you've enabled the craftsman to help you realize.
Yes, but mostly the piece, the light I commissioned once for one of my projects in a mountain project. It was very nice because it was under a small house in wood, and it was very nice because it fit perfectly with the snow aspect and the alpine aspect of it was mostly for like an art piece for me. And underneath this light, I do a table, but it's this function, you know. And I like the way it was very arty piece and very functional piece. And I'm more functional, you know, because I love piece that be used a table and to share this kind of sensibility. It's very nice because this is the limit of the art and design, and me, it's only function, and the balance is perfect. Yes.
But so I also think, like in what you find, I think what is attractive in craft is like the hand. You can still notice the hand of the maker, exactly. And I think that is what we use mainly machine made techniques. But in the way how things move, you should recognize our hand, and I think that is what the aspect that needs to be there in order to see and believe or trust the work.
Yes, when I work with ceramists, for example, I work with many ceramists. Sometimes you feel really the hand of the ceramist and that's why I love craftsmen. It's that you feel the human, because each hand, each spirit is very different. When I do some sconces in ceramic, each time I do a lamp for the show, and the lamp are not done by the same ceramic. It's the same drawing, and the ceramic is not the same. And you really feel that the hand of the ceramist. That's why it makes beautiful the object, you know, because it's very personal each time.
Yes. And that by preserving these people at Roissy, they can carry on making these beautiful things. So, are there any other Would anybody else like to ask a question? Well, I think that I would like to ask a further question, which is just where you think it's all going to go now, in the sense that will you run out at Roissy of the skilled people to realise these ambitious designs that your artists bring you?
You have to say that we struggle to find new people, and that's we've put in place a program for training younger generations. So every skilled artisan we have now, which are in their 50s, have 2 to 3 young people to be trained, and the transmission has become one of the most important things for us today. But what is going? Well, I'm amazed about something is we have 3 different organizations within the same world, and we all started maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and we were like by ourselves, and now we all have like real teams of a big number of people, especially for our field, and this is something which is really new and which is great. It's sustainable, and we can make these teams growing and growing because the projects that are achieved thanks to these teams are finding museums,
yes, there's
collectors.
a sort of energy. Yeah. And how about you? Because I think you have searched out the people who can create the objects that you want to the standards that you require. Do you see younger people coming along?
Yes, I started like 18 years ago with doing my very few furniture, and as I'm growing, and then as I'm a designer in a gallery, I try to find new people who could help me to achieve this program, to make more furniture, not only unique piece. Then the system is changing, because now I'm doing, for example, upholstery, seat, and I'm not going to do a unique piece. I'm doing chairs. I sell 14 chairs, and I need people behind that to be able to help me to do it. You know, at the very beginning, it was very artisanal. Now it changed. The system has been changed because I have some order, thankfully, and I have to
deliver them.
Deliver them, exactly.
But there are the people who have the skills.
But I have all my team, and my team was particularly young, and I'm the older, and I hope they will follow me, and of course to find a new, young and talented people.
And presumably for you.
Well, what I think is important, that the more we are looking at our screens all day and are on our phones and our laptops, the more there's also the need to connect with the real world and to feel and touch things that are different than everything that is already there. And I think making is in the human nature, and we have the urge to make things. So I think that will always stay, but I think the environment changes and the context changes. But I think maybe more than ever, I mean, not only in our field, but just people want to make things. People want to grow their food. People want to make their own clothes. It is a necessity alongside all the digital things that you have to balance that out.
But then there is, of course, that element of time, because if the idea comes first and then you go out and you find the skills you need to realize something, if those skills are ones that it requires 10,000 hours to perfect, it's...
Well, soon we have robots to take over all the other jobs, and then we have time for that again, I think.
Because it's true that, that there are some skills that do just take time. Mm-hmm. But then there are, in other words, then there are other skills that you can go out and you can, because you two have to develop these new skills every single time, because you're sort of pioneering where you're going. And so that's one very different version, I think, of craft and craftsmanship.
Well, yeah, I think I don't know where it's going, but I think what is important for ourselves and what we make is the connection with the world and the reality. And I mean, we made this floating block of concrete last year. We could also make that as an animation. I mean, it was much less work to do it in that way, but that doesn't deliver the same attachment to it from ourselves and from public. So I think it always makes sense to make.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that confrontation of an individual with an object is such a powerful one, of the human scale with the, and that will remain as long as there are people to find things of a human scale that made by the human.
Yeah, I mean, personally, we are very interested in what the possibilities are in the future, and we try to go beyond what is possible already and try to make that. And I mean, that's our way of working and how we like to develop ourselves and contribute in maybe developing the world.
Yeah. Well, I think that. Oh, you would have a question. Okay. Well, thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you.
And I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.